Hi y'all, welcome to Bedtime Noir. And tonight I was going to share with you a book that I discovered quite by accident. It's called Garlic, Mint, and Sweet Basil. It's written by Jean-Claude Issot. And the way I stumbled across this book is I was looking for a book of essays. I teach English and essay writing and creative writing and literature. And I was looking for a book of essays and I found this one and thought it looked interesting. And then I started reading more about it, and I got a copy of the book, and I found out that Jean-Claude Issot is credited as the father of what they call Mediterranean noir, with which I was unfamiliar. And so I really enjoyed reading this book, and it really gives you the sights, sounds, and flavors of Marseille. And then it also defines what is meant by Mediterranean noir. Mr. Issot wrote a trilogy of noir novels, Total Chaos, Kermo, and Celia, and he has a detective character in those. And I haven't read those. Those are on my to-be-read list, but I'm really looking forward to it. And just reading what he says about Mediterranean noir, I found quite fascinating, and just the way he conjures up all the sensory details about Marseille, it really made me want to go there, and it'll really make you hungry for some of the foods that are mentioned in this book of essays. And it conjures up a sense of place, and I just found it quite fascinating, quite enjoyable to read. But I wanted to share with you just a little passage of what he says about Mediterranean noir. And there'll be some names that I'm sure you're familiar with, and some that may be a little new to you, and maybe some new authors you might want to check out. So here goes. In the beginning is the book, and that moment in which Cain kills his brother Abel. In the blood of this fratricide, the Mediterranean gives us their first noir novel. There may have been other murders before this, but this one is written down and establishes forever the singular problem of mankind, that crime is the driving force that, over the centuries, will govern relationships between people, whoever they are, masters or servants, princes or emperors, free men or slaves. In the beginning, indeed, all the motives for murder already existed: envy, jealousy, desire, fear, money, power, hatred, hatred of others, hatred of the world. That is the basis of all the Greek tragedies. In case we had forgotten, the chutzpah of Patrick Raynal, editor of Gallimard's Série Noire, was there to remind us. When he published Sophocles' Oedipus Rex in his famous series, some in the narrow circles of the publishing world thought he was joking, but he wasn't, far from it. It was an academic, Didier Malmaison, who adapted the Greek text into a Série Noire novel. This magnificent book, which opens with a classic noir scene. A stranger arrives in town. Everyone watches him, closing their doors and windows as he passes. He crosses the street, can be read in one sitting, like a real crime novel. Well, if you look at it that way, many teachers were forced to admit, indeed, if you look at it that way, the line of descent from Greek tragedy to the noir novel becomes obvious. In Oedipus, we witness a search for the truth of a man's life. In the noir novel, beginning with the Americans, the same process is developed in parallel with an investigation into the social conditions of contemporary man, the modern form of fate. This is very clear in the works of David Goodis and Jim Thompson, who both deal with the tragedy of modern societies. In a 1995 interview appearing in the review Le Temps Moderne, Patrick Raynal explained this lineage. If we can broadly define noir writing, noir inspiration, as a way of looking at the world, at the dark, opaque criminal side of the world, shot through with the intense feeling of fatality we carry within us due to the fact that the only thing we know for certain is that we are going to die, then Oedipus can indeed be said to be the first noir novel. James M. Cain, in The Postman Always Rings Twice, is another exponent of modern tragedy. I have not plucked Cain's name from the air. We now know that his book was a major influence on Albert Camus' The Outsider. The similarities are striking. A man, in no way predisposed to become a criminal, kills another man and finds himself in prison. Beneath the stars in the night sky, he discovers the benign indifference of the world, and his last wish, in order for the drama to be fully consummated, is that there should be a crowd of spectators at his execution, and that they should greet him with cries of hatred. For me, The Outsider is the beginning of the modern Mediterranean crime novel, more so, in my opinion, than the novels of Manuel Vasquez Montalban, who owes more in both form and content to Chandler and Hammett than to Kane. Today, there are many authors continuing this line of descent from Greek tragedy. The Spaniards Andrew Martin and Francisco Gonzalez Ledesma, the Italians Pepe Ferrandino, Nino Filasto, Santo Piazzazi, Nicoletta Valerani, and Carlo Lucarelli, the Algerians Yasmina Kadra, Abelkader Jaimani, and the Frenchmen René Fragnier, Pascal Dassault, and Marcus Malty. All of them combine the viewpoint of Camus with that of Montalban. The inspiration comes from this observation by Camus in Helen's Exile, 1948. Such moments make one realize that if the Greeks knew despair, they experienced it always through beauty in its oppressive quality. In this golden sadness, tragedy reaches its highest point. The despair of our world, on the other hand, has fed on ugliness and crisis, for which reason Europe would be ignoble if ever suffering could be. The Mediterranean crime novel is the fatalistic acceptance of this drama that has hung over us ever since man killed his brother on one of the shores of this sea. So, that's from Garlic, Mint, and Sweet Basil by Jean-Claude Izzo. And I hope you get a chance to take a look at it. It's from Europa Compass Books, and it's a really short read, but it is really packed with beautiful description and more on Izzo's philosophy of Mediterranean noir and what it means to be a person from someplace else. He talks about that a lot, which I think many of us can relate to that on some level, and so I found it quite fascinating, and I hope you'll check it out. And we'll see you next time on Bedtime Noir.